Hello there makers, it's Jo from Minerva, and today we're going to be taking a look at some of the symbols and markings that you find on your pattern pieces. If you're new to sewing, it can sometimes feel like there's a secret language that you're not aware of, and I'm here to show you what some of those symbols mean so that you can make some accurate cutting for your garment. If you use the major pattern companies, that's Butterick, Simplicity, Burda, those sorts of patterns, then the markings will remain the same and be really consistent. But if you use an indie pattern, then the instructions might be slightly different and the pattern symbols might be different, so you need to check out if there's a key in the instruction booklet. Pattern markings are really important because they're not just for the piece of paper, they're to transfer onto your fabric. So you'll need some skills for transferring those markings. So you'll either need to know how to do tailor's tacks. You can use some carbon paper and a serrated wheel so that you can imprint any pattern markings onto your fabric, or you can use an air erasable pen or a chalk. Some people snip little notches on the edges of their fabric, but that's only good for markings that are on the edges, not for any markings that are in the centre pieces. Pattern markings will be referred to in the pattern, so when you get your pieces of fabric and you start following the steps of the pattern instructions, you will be able to locate those markings that you made at the cutting stage to help you have easy construction of your garment. Even if you don't understand what the pattern markings are for, it's really important that you mark them so that you can construct your garment accurately. Let's look at the main ones so that you can get started. First thing to look out for are the cutting lines. So sometimes looks a bit confusing when you look at a pattern and there's all those different lines, but each line is for a different size. So once you've decided which size you're cutting out, you follow that same patterned line all the way around the pattern, and then you use the same for any markings. So say there was a pocket on here, there'd be a place for a pocket corresponding with that size. There might be darts that correspond to that size, so you're looking for that same pattern all of the time. Other things to look for on the pattern are these notches. So these are little triangles, and on some patterns they're an outward triangle, on some patterns they're an inward triangle, on some patterns they're just a straight line. So they're a little bit tricky to spot, but you need to look for them, and you need to mark those in some way onto your fabric so that you can construct your garment, because it will ask for you to match up the notches. So this is a sleeve piece, and when I fold it in half and match that notch, then the hem is in line and the underarm is in line. And they're used for lots of different things, not just that. So there'll be different markings in different places to indicate different construction points. On a sleeve in particular, the back sleeve is marked with 2 notches and the front sleeve is marked with 1, so that you put the right sleeve in the right side of your top and you don't get a twisted sleeve. The sleeve often has a sleeve head point as well that needs to be marked. So this circle here indicates where that joins onto the shoulder seam. Sometimes it's slightly one way or another way. It's not always smack in the middle. So don't fold it in half and find out where it is, because it's not always right in the centre. Each piece will tell you how many to cut. So this says cut 2, and it means 2 that are opposite. So you need to have your fabric folded double, right side to right side or wrong side to wrong side, so that you get 2 opposite pieces. So you get a back piece that goes on the one back shoulder and a back piece that goes on the other back shoulder. So it doesn't, you can't cut 2 side by side. You can't cut one like this and then one like this, because they will be the same piece. They won't be opposite pieces. You will also see this very large arrow, and this is a grain line arrow. You can get more information on our grain line video, but I'll just tell you here. This needs to run parallel to the selvage. So if this edge of the fabric is the selvage edge, the one that says Minerva exclusive fabric. Then your grain line needs to run parallel to the selvage. It needs to have the same distance at the top and the bottom. So that is 10 centimetres. So the bottom needs to be 10 centimetres away. If you've got a double pointed arrow, it does mean that if you've got a woven fabric and you don't have a directional print, you could turn it around, because it's saying that grain line can run in either direction as long as it's in that direction vertically. But you would have to make sure that your print design doesn't have one sleeve with the strawberries going one way up and one sleeve with the strawberries going the other way up. If your arrow only has one arrowhead on it, that means you can only put your piece in this direction, and that will happen on patterns for velvet, cord, faux fur. So if it only has one arrowhead, it can only go in that direction. You hardly ever see patterns with a cross grain arrow on, but you do see patterns with a bias arrow on. This is a collar piece, and I have to cut one collar on the straight grain, and then I need to cut another collar on the bias. So then I have to use the fold line and fold the fabric, put my fabric on the fold, and make sure that my grain is at 45 degrees. When you're placing your pattern pieces on the fabric, you need to look for that grain line. You also need to look for this fold line, and a fold line is a double pointed arrow pointing to the edge of your pattern piece, and that means that you need to match that line up to the fold of the fabric, so that when you cut it out and open out the fabric, you will have the shape of your top without a join down the middle. So this one won't say cut 2, this will say cut 1. So you put the arrow touching the edge of the fold, and then you pin that piece down, cut it out, and then you open it out. Here are the corresponding notches to that pattern piece we saw. So you can see this is the back piece because it's got 2 notches on, so that's the back armhole. This is the side notch, and this is a neck notch. Sometimes you have extra notches around the neck if you're putting in a collar. These 2 lines here are a lengthen and shorten line. So this pattern helpfully has where the waistline lands. So if you're longer in the body, you can cut that paper open and open it out and put a piece of paper behind and extend your pattern piece in the body length, or you can cut that piece and make the body shorter and take out a piece. You might see that on sleeves, on waists, on skirts, especially shaped skirts, because if a skirt is too long, you can't just chop the bottom off because you'll lose the shape of the skirt. You need to use the lengthen and shorten line to make sure that you keep the shape of and style of the garment. These are bust darts. They have a sort of little kick out at the back. These are the dart legs, and this is the dart apex. I've cut out a size 8, so I need to make sure that I'm following the same colour pattern that I did for the rest of the top. Sometimes it just helps to mark it on, especially when it's really busy like that. And I need to make sure that I mark the darts before I take the pattern piece off. I'm using a carbon wheel and some paper. and then I can do the same for the other side. You can put a tailor's tack in there and a tailor's tack in there. You can sort of, some people lift it up and draw it with a pencil, but it doesn't matter how you mark them as long as you followed the right size for the size that you've cut. Sometimes there isn't one on this pattern, but you will see a dart apex, and that looks like that shape, and that's really useful. You find it on major pattern companies more often. That's really useful because when you hold the tissue paper up to yourself to sort of get a bit of an idea of the measurements, that needs to be the fullest part of your bust, and then you can work out if you need to move the darts up or down depending on where the fullest part of your bust is. So that's what that marking is if you see that on a pattern. You might see some dots at the top of the sleeve head. That's for putting in some easing stitches. If you've got a puff sleeve or a gathered sleeve, then you will get a wobbly line. You'll see that wobbly line in any place where you need a gather. You might find hem lines indicated on pattern pieces. You might also see these sort of features. So there's circles and lines coming down and an arrow, and that's saying bring this line to this line in that direction. Take this line and take it to this line, and that creates pleats. There'll be specific information about how to make the pleats. If you're making box pleats, then you'll see another line that comes and takes things in a different direction, but they'll all be marked, and they take quite a long time to transfer to your fabric. This one is for a buttonhole, and this one marks a button placement. And this one is for a pocket. It shows you where to line up the top of your pocket. If you're getting more complex, then you might see this sort of pattern, and that's to make an opening or a welt or a gap. So it wants you to snip here and here, here and here, and cut along that line, and then you can fold those pieces back and you will have a letterbox opening shape. So those are some other markings to look out for on your tissue pieces. Thank you very much for watching. I hope that's helped you to locate some pattern markings that you didn't know, and help you to maybe choose a pattern that's a little step up with different types of markings. We would love you to make a profile so you can upload your makes, or you can take a look at other makers and take some inspiration from all the amazing projects that are taking place in our sewing community. In the meantime, head over to Minerva and take a look at some of our promotional offers and events that are on at the moment. Thank you very much for watching. See you again soon.